With 7 rows to choose from, surely you should just anticipate what your opponents play. Most people would think that this is a game of luck and skill, but really, Connect 4 is a game with a level of depth and strategy that few realize at first glance. In this video, we'll look at strategies and probabilities behind placements or pieces, as well as tactics on how to win the game. To start with, you're going to want to play first. However you decide this, with rock, paper, scissors or a coin flip, going first gives you an advantage, as if played perfectly, you will win each time. In comparison, even playing perfectly but going second in Connect 4 does not guarantee a win, as a tie or loss may be forced. This is because as player 1, the perfect place to play your first piece is in the middle spot of D1. This is the only guaranteed way to win, assuming you then play the rest of your steps well. As there are bounds of the board, the number of spots being finite, a checker in D1 allows you to make a Connect 4 in all upwards possible directions, as opposed to something like G1, which only allows a Connect 4 in one direction of play. Saying this, it's very important to focus on that middle column. Generally speaking, either player can improve their odds of winning by loading up the middle. With 7 columns, it means that any horizontal or diagonal row of 4 will end up having a piece located in the middle column. Knowing that the most important column is the middle, let's say you're not player 1. The impulse tells you place a checker just above the first at D2. However, you're better off playing it on the 2 spots beside D1, as this attempts to ensure that player 1 then plays another piece on D2. While they do have control over the middle column at this point, it does not mean that then you cannot take control of D3, which is one of the most important spots. As D3 can form any Connect 4 in all directions and permutations, it means the probability of this piece being a part of a row of 4 is much greater, due to the greater number of possibilities it can be used with. Now, the next major strategy involves playing the odd or even rows. Let's take player 1's position. A great strategy at any point is being able to form a horizontal or diagonal 3 in a row, where the last piece to be filled in falls in an odd row. This is because knowing you can make 4 of a kind. Here, you won't place a checker, as that would mean you would immediately lose, which puts this whole column out of bounds until the end. As a result, play simple and block anything for the remainder of the round, which then means at the end you are left with this empty column. But as you are the first player, your turn takes the first plot for this column, meaning you can complete that 4 of a kind by force. This method is also known as the Parity Strategy, and this works for the second player as well, except that the second player must set up their 3 in a line in an even row. As you've probably learned by now, watching the grid carefully as it builds up is critical to winning Connect 4, because 4 in a row can occur in any direction, and threats build up quickly. As discussed before, playing a perfect game requires defending against all threats made by your opponent. These include major threats, being a 3 in a row, as well as minor threats. Minor threats are 2 pieces in a row. Thinking ahead, you'd want to close up that empty spot immediately. Likewise, if your opponent has set up 2 pieces in a row, with a spacer on either side, thinking ahead would tell you to block them on one side. Otherwise, your opponent will be assured a win by placing a piece on either side, creating a line of 3 and then 4. In fact, a major part of playing Connect 4 is playing as aggressively as possible wherever you can, as opposed to always blocking opponents from making rows or waiting till opponents attempt to make a play. Force your opponents to respond to 3 in a row checker threats to take momentum. Try to get 3 checkers in a row, ideally in odd rows, but if not, then it's still fine. They'll have to block you immediately, which will put them out of offense mode. Then you have the opportunity to strike, which is why setting traps is crucial in winning Connect 4. Mastering Connect 4 requires assumptions that your opponent know all the strategies that you know, if not even more. Before placing your next piece, always consider what your opponent would do in response, as you'll want to assume that they are playing optimally. Therefore, attempt to consider what your opponent is attempting to make, as it can be quite clear where your opponent is going to go. This means you have to respond to 3 or so turns in advance, ensuring to count your turn number accordingly so that you can play a piece, so that they are blocked in any position. The main warning signs for you when defending are firstly 2 in a row, at which point you should block as soon as possible, and then 3 in a row, which clearly requires immediate action. Given that you are now a casual Connect 4 professional, a donation to the channel in the form of a like and subscribe would be much appreciated.